Hello and welcome to Mbikudi. My name is Mbikudi, and today I wanted to talk to you about my life as a business owner or as a business startup. And it has been a journey, and I don't think it's something that you usually see the best of our journey on social media. So we talk about how great the journey is and the opportunities, and there are many opportunities, and it's good. And also it's really good to have the opportunity to start something that you've been thinking about for a while, and then seeing people liking it, appreciating it, and supporting you. But there are also many challenges, and then many frustration, and many things that can actually, like shorten, make the journey longer, but also that can impact you. So what usually happen is that for many, and like for entrepreneurs, for many business owners, or even for many people working in social enterprises like myself, you work hard. So you work really hard. You work harder than you've ever done in any job, for any study, for anything. And when I mean that I've had to work the hardest in my whole life, as in, like, I was a straight A student, so I worked really hard at school. So when I was 13, so I had to start, stop speaking French and then learning in French, and then I had to start learning in English. So I had to do that massive transition in terms of having to learn a new language, integrate into the society, but also do so very quickly, so that by the next 2 to 3 years I was going to be able to go to university, so meet my target. So I had about 3 years to meet my target, because I came here in third year, so that would be about year 9. So I had until year 12 or year 6 year in Scotland to be able to make my grade to go to university. So by the time I was in 5th year, I was able to crush my grades, make my grade already. And then the 6th year was just an extra year before I eventually went to uni, got a scholarship in uni. But I also worked really hard, because the other issue that we had was, like, I couldn't go to university back then. So I had to work really hard to be able to make sure that I could get a scholarship. So that's why I crushed it by 5th year. So in a sense, I only had about 2.5 years, because I started third year in January, so around about this time of the year actually would have been, so yeah, today would have been actually my first day at school. So it's all those years ago. And when I look back at how I got into the system. So I had to learn the language, and I had to work hard, not knowing what to expect. But I made the decision that I was going to work hard. I was not going to let anything, deter me or make me go slow or anything like that. So I worked really hard. So by the time I was in 5th year, end of 5th year, I got my grades. I could go to uni, but I couldn't go to university because not every asylum seeker could go to university at the time. So therefore we had to lobby. So we lobbied with Carry Scotland. We had to talk to many ministers and do presentations. So by the time I was in 5th year, so I would have been about 16 at the time, I made a presentation to, I think it was over 100 people, where we had to talk about our issues, our struggles, but more so the fact, you're working really hard. But back then, the future looked glim in terms of you didn't know what could have happened. So then that happened, and that moved on. And then through all the lobbies that we did, so there was a lot of people from my school and other schools that actually spoke about the elephant in the room, really. And in a sense, that's also what I'm doing now. So we spoke about the elephant in the room, which was the fact of, like, okay, so you open your doors to, asylum seekers and to children from other places, parts in the world, but yet by the time they've been in the UK or in Scotland at the time more than 3-4 years, they still have to pay international fees when it comes to going to universities and stuff. And many of their family can't afford that, or cannot, because either they don't have the right to work, or it's impractical for someone with a normal salary in the UK to be able to afford international fees. So through all the lobbying, the law changed. And the funny thing to point out as well is, like, although I was lobbying with many of my, my fellow students and stuff at the time, one of the things that's important is that I already had a scholarship to attend university, but I couldn't bear the thought of having to go through university alone, knowing that I had friends who had worked really hard, just equally as me, to get where they were, and then that the doors would have been open for me, but shut for them. So that's something that since a young age was never something that sat right with me at all. So we did that. So that, I would say, compared to what you go through as a business was easy. That's like a starter. That was a starter for me. And then you get to university, and again, I was studying law, which was really interesting, but it was also very hard because it was something that you had to learn a system where you're taught that there's very little you can do, and there's very little changes that you can put on the system. So you go into law because you want to fight injustice, and you want a just word, and you want something better, but then this is what you're faced with. So then fast forward it. So my degree was 5 years, and I might talk about it on a different video, but my degree was 5 years, and I was studying law in English with Italian. So I ended up speaking 3 languages. So initially I spoke Lingala, Kikongo, and French. So I got into the UK, I learned English, number 4. And then while I was learning English, my teacher was like, oh, why don't you learn Italian? So I started doing so. And by the time I knew it, before I knew it, as a joke, it was almost like a joke. I never knew I was actually going to be able to do that, but I was studying law in Italian. So, and now I speak Italian as well. So that was that. So then having to learn all that was very easy, because part of my motivation was the fact that as soon as I finished, I would have had a whole lot of opportunities that would be open to me. And it felt like it was going to be it felt like the hard part. So I was working hard knowing that that would have been the hard part. And once I graduated, you know, I would have all the promises that not only my family, my teachers, the community promised, right? But then what happened is, upon graduation, or when you come nearer to graduation, you start realizing that the reality after graduation is not what you expect. So in terms of, you're told this amazing truth, and it's almost like you have to go through this path, and then they tell you about all these opportunities. So once you come to the end of the path and you look around, in many cases, for many people, you don't see those opportunities, and they're very few. Therefore, it feels like you are fighting this invisible battle, because you've got the studies that you've done, you've achieved, you've done everything you were told to do. Come to the end, the door is so narrow that only a few people that can go through, and I think it's not fair, because if you know how narrow, because the thing about it is that having gone through the, you know, my degree, first degree, and, you know, going through the diploma as well, I realized that it wasn't just for people who studied law or people who studied maths or medicine, but it's actually something that's across many degrees. The fact that many go in, but very few will come out with opportunities. But then you're not prepared for the fact that once you come out, the opportunities are very few and very narrow. And you've spent the best years of your life actually, you know, working hard and struggling for that. But then you have all that frustration that you keep in, because you believe that if you don't get the opportunities, it's because you so-called didn't get the best grade, or you were not the best, or someone else was better than you. But the reality is that there's something wrong in how things are going, and there's something wrong with the system, and there's something wrong about, you know, making many students go through a course and go with all the heart in and work really hard, and then by the end, by the time they graduate, either they're left on their own devices to actually get ahead or anything like that. But it's something very, very, very strong. But in any case, aside all the adversity, we created Mbikudi. So we created Mbikudi, we created the product, and we were able to take from all the opportunities, and I guess also take from all the silent struggles, and also the fight with the invisible barriers, because there's a lot of barriers. And we decided, you know what, if we've been able to go through all those barriers in life, and I've just cited a few just so you can have an idea of how resilient I am as a person. But you go through all those fights, and you get to a point where you realize that, you know, enough is enough. And I think it's a case of like when you create your brand of product. So when you come out in the social, you know, you come out as a social enterprise or as a business, really, because I do believe that the social enterprise is, what I understood back then was like, it's like a charity, but more business-like, in terms of you have to become sustainable, because you want to do so much good in society. And I do believe that it's something that everyone should have, you know, whether, regardless of what you're working in, you have to bring some benefits to other people as well. So you get started in your business or social enterprise or your activity, let's call it your activity. So when you get started, in my case, what you realize is there are many barriers, there are many barriers and many struggles. And when you look at the statistic and you realize that based on how, funding operates or how opportunities operate, and then you look at the barriers in many cases of the people who benefit the least from all those opportunities or who are affected the most from the barriers, what you realize, young people, check. Women, check. Ethnic minority, check. And African and Black people, check. So you then realize that actually you tick boxes more for the barriers than for the opportunities. But then you thought that you can actually fight for it and you can actually do your best about it. So you work really hard and you start your business, you work really hard, you go through training, you go through learning, you go through supporting other businesses, you go through understanding what happened. But the reality is that there is still it feels like at times there's an invisible path that you have to go through. And this is what I call by the injustice, is because the statistics are there to prove and to showcase what I'm talking. And I do think for many people, I'm a statistic, actually. And I've gotten to believe that we are a statistic. And for some ways as well, you've got to believe that those statistics are, beneficial to some people and not to others as well. And why do I say that? Is because you'll go through many awards, whether in the ethnic minority community or like widespread awards, and you get people rewarded for the life in business, and it's amazing. So you're there and you're happy for the people who win, because it's good to see someone win. I'm happy to see someone win. But the sad part is the fact that where are the 20-year-old? I've met a 25-year-old who's been teaching dance to people for the last 10 years. She's got 10 years of business experience. Where are the recognition for that? What are the recognition for the young people in business? Where are the recognition or the space, the showcase to actually enable young people to thrive, to expand in this business economy? And it's really sad. It's really sad because I don't identify as a millennial. But for those who talk about the achievement of millennials, when you get to Scotland, when you get to the UK, what do you see? You see very little and you see close to none as well. And this is simple because young businesses are hardly supported. Young businesses go through a lot of struggles and it's very, very hard. It's very, very hard because I get lots of young people who come, and especially for us, when we started, we were a product-based business. So we started by making product. Quickly, we have to incorporate services. We had to diversify. We really had to do so much in order to be able to compete in the industry that we are in. And every time our customers write to us and tell us how much they value the service that we provide, they value what we do. And it's funny because when you then come into a business setting and you're talking to people about what you do, everybody say, how are you able to achieve that? How are you able to do all that? But yet, you get very little support as well. Or you have to really bleed to receive the support. And it's something that's now is starting to be such a strong injustice, because when I set up to business, when I wanted to start the business, my hair got fired when I was 21 before I started Mbikudi. So since I was 21, it's essentially a case of like, I wanted to learn how to do the social enterprise, Mbikudi, but also learn how to be an example that young people can follow. But right now, and this is the reason for the video, is I don't feel confident to actually tell the young person that if you go through starting a business, you can be sustainable for your business. You'll get all the support you can, because I know from my experience that it's not always true. So I can't tell a young person that, start your business, whether it's a chocolate or anything like that, because you get all the support, because I feel like this is not true. And in many cases, I am honest to the people that I talk to about the fact that to be sustainable, we had to diversify a lot more than our competition. but yet we still had to diversify a lot to be able to have a good range of product, but also have support from anywhere we can get. And we had to work very hard. We had to work very hard, meaning that it was a journey that meant that we had to not only sacrifice a lot, but also go through a lot of burnout, you know. And by burnout, I mean by period of, you know, I went through a period of 6 months a while back, not this year, but I think it was between 2017 2018. But I went through a period of 6 months where I literally couldn't do anything. But being the person that was moving the social enterprise back then, and you do have the vision, and it was a very dark place, because you feel like if you're not moving, nothing is happening. And then but then you're still having to push the dream, and you're still having to go forward. And it's true, back in that, when I was going through the burnout, I got a few phone calls actually by other social enterprises who actually told me that, you know, what you're going through, you need to let people know, you need to talk about it, you need to actually express what you're saying. But then I'm like, equally back then, what I believed was like, if I had spoken about my burnout, or if I had spoken about my lack of energy, how I was lethargic, or how hard it was, or how I felt like all the responsibility was weighing heavy on me, I would look weak. Meaning that I would look weak, and I could actually lose, I could lose the support that I was getting, either through grant funding or investment or anything like that. So I didn't want to appear weak, but the biggest reason why I didn't want to appear weak was because I didn't want to take the hope from other social enterprises or from other people who wanted to start something through looking at me and thinking like, if this is how it was going to look like, I don't want to do. But what I realized is actually it's a motivation of the fact of like, with this video, what I'm saying is many more needs to start to realize how it is, but we shouldn't be quiet about it. We should talk about our pains. We should talk about our wins equally. And I don't think social media makes it easier for us to talk about our wins, but it's also a great point to talk about the struggles of the journey. And I think this one is the first part of the video where I'm really talking about how it's important for us to all start, because through many of us starting, and especially through many people like me, who look like me, who may identify with me, and starting in, and it's a case of like, you will then see all the barriers, and the barriers will become more real, and then will stop being statistic, but will become real. And I think my message to you today is that don't be quiet about your pains. Don't be quiet about, especially when it's a service that must have been or could have been provided to you that you didn't benefit from. You need to speak about it. So I do hope that this might inspire you to still go with your business, still start it, but realize that number one, you're not alone, and you need to speak out as well. Thank you.